Well, before we get into now, I think like part of your story and you coming out of retirement and where you were at in your career is I do think it's worth it to like revisit the beginning a little bit. So in 2002, you came out of UC Davis. What were you thinking?
Yeah, 2003 was my first fight. It was illegal in California to have mixed martial arts, so all my fights were on Indian reservations. The lightest weight class for me was 155 pounds. I wrestled in college at 133 pounds. I got paid $200 to show up, extra $200 if you win, and I could sell some tickets and get a little piece of the ticket sales. And was bussing tables and coaching wrestling, making well below the poverty line, and felt like I was living the dream, to be honest. You know, I got to train all day, and I was coaching wrestling at UC Davis, and then I'd go and do jiu-jitsu or do some kickboxing or whatever it was. It's wild, man. You know, it was just something that sounded really fun, and I knew I'd be good at it.
Huh. So how did you like your first fight come about? Like, is this something that you knew you were going to do, or did it come up like organically? How did it happen?
So I had a friend named Tyrone Glover that wrestled locally here in high school, and he had taken a fight. So I bought a ticket to his fight when I was still in college, and saw, my first Indian reservation live fight. Even though I'd been a big fan of mixed martial arts for a long time, and as soon as I graduated, I started coaching at Davis, like I said, and just knew that I wanted to try it. I just thought it'd be fun. So I ended up calling. I got the number from somebody of the promoter, called the promoter, and I'm like, hey, nice to meet you. My name's Urijah. I want to fight. And click, he hung up. And I'm like, called back, no answer. And I'm like, that was weird, whatever. So I was just going to all the local gyms around Sacramento, and I would coach wrestling at UC Davis for a full day, and then I would go to jiu-jitsu somewhere, and I would go to here, and I would be like, yeah, I want to take one of these fights, and there was this like slick-talking dude in this hole-in-the-wall gym who was like, I can get you a fight. And so that guy called the promoter, lied about a bunch of stuff, and got me a fight.
Like
so,
what? What do you mean? Like that you had been doing it for a while?
Well,
or?
he was a bunch more about his stuff. Like he was my trainer and this and that and blah blah blah. And anyways, he's like, I got you a fight in 4 weeks. And then I was like, damn, this is real,
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't tell my mom. I didn't really know what to expect too much. I was pumped to be getting $200. I already had graduated college, and I was, have my emergency teaching credential, so I could go substitute teach as I figured out what I wanted to do next in life. And never made it to the first day of substitute teaching. I took that first fight, made a little under $500, $200 to show up,
Mm-hmm.
$200 to win, and an extra like $50 for selling tickets to all my buddies,
Yeah.
which was the best part of it. At that time, at the end of a fight, you get a video VHS cassette tape of your fight, and we must have watched that fight like a million times. I was living in a crappy little apartment in downtown Sacramento. I was bussing tables at a little restaurant, and on top of coaching, on top of training, on top of, I started my first little business called TLC, Top of the Line Coaching, where I was, going to the junior highs and the high schools and doing like wrestling seminars, and we must have watched that first video cassette tape like,
Mm-hmm.
150 times. I don't know.
You still have it?
I don't have the cassette tape. No, I think it probably broke at some point.
Yeah.
And, then came CDs, and then came,
Mm-hmm.
on demand and everything else. So
Mm-hmm.
I still have some of my first posters and that kind of stuff. I have some of the first clothing that I ever made. And I was hustling. I was literally up early in the morning coaching wrestling. Then I started selling Alpha Male t-shirts in 2004.
So you started Alpha Male pretty much right away.
Yeah, right away. Yeah, I was a human development major in college, so I learned about alpha males in nature and how it related to humans, and just thought it was cool with the brains and the brawn and persuasiveness and this and that. And so yeah, that was my right from the get-go. I started Alpha Male in 2004.
And how would you describe what the fight scene was like in Sacramento at the time?
Man, the fight scene in Sacramento was kind of like the fight scene today, but just on a very small scale and even more characters. I mean, it was like, toothless folks in the crowd and beer spilling over and like everybody was everybody that wanted to be could be a fighter. They pull guys out of the crowd. We'd get a guest fighter that came to all these little events. So, Randy Couture was there at one fight, and Tito Ortiz was there at one fight, and Rampage Jackson was there at one fight, and it was like a big deal. It was the Wild West. I was wearing shoes during the time. You could knee in the head on the ground. There was no weight class for me. There was, I didn't have insurance for the first 9, 10 fights of my career, which is crazy. You think about it now. It was just like, just wild man doing it for the passion. It is what it is.
Yeah. And I mean, early on, you were good at it, though, I mean, when did you start to realize that you were potentially special in it, and where did you think it was ultimately going to lead to?
I realized that I was special in it before I started doing it. Had I not thought that, I would not have done the fight, had stepped foot in the fight game, because you have to have like an unrealistic belief. I mean, I remember, before there was money, before there was fame, before there was a weight class for me having these massive visions of what I could do and what it would be like when I made it and blah, blah, blah. And it was just, there was no pathway. There was no weight class for me. The UFC only had 3 events a year. The pay was crap. It wasn't covered by ESPN or Fox or anybody. There was Sherdog and MMA Weekly, I think, were the only ones. I didn't even have a computer back then, but there was no smartphones back then, or very few, far in between, So yeah, it's been a long time, man. 2003 was my first fight. 16 years later.
I mean, you obviously, like, you have two different things that are going, like, in that time in your life, you probably had, this is just me kind of speculating, you can tell me if I'm right, but you had 2 kind of like different things going. One is like the dreamer that you are, you just described it. And the other part is like, you're a pretty smart guy, and that you've done well with businesses, and you have that analytical mind of like, this is going to work, or this is going to be profitable, or whatever. But like you just said, there was no path to it. Like you were just kind of like wishful thinking that it was going to turn into that, or like what do you think prevented that part of your mind from stopping you to do that? Because at that time, like, that was kind of a stupid thing to do.
Absolutely, big time. It's funny because I preach to the guys all the time, and I'm mentoring this team, have been since the get-go, and talking about just almost being delusional, but not being afraid to adjust along the way and work really, really hard. So I feel like it was a bit of delusion, a bit of foresight. I could see the writing on the wall that things were going to get bigger with it. I was a big fan of the UFC back before it kind of went into the dark ages. All through my college career, it was kind of in the dark ages. But, when they first had Royce Gracie and that was like the best moments for me. That was like Super Bowl for me. I'd watch those fights over and over again. And so I knew the excitement and the possibility. The guys coming in with a real business sense are what changed the game. And I'm a guy that has been taught since I was a little kid to follow my passion and believe that anything's possible. And, I don't do things for money. It's not the money. It's about, living a life that I want. And so that's what I was doing. And for me, it was fun and it was exciting and it was something that I knew I was good at and something that I knew I could excel at because of my, my mental capacity and because of my workload and what I could take and give back. It was like something that I had confidence in, but it was a bit delusional at the time. It was not a smart path. If you want to be in the NFL, you play Little League, then you play junior high, then you play high school, then you go to college, then you get drafted, and it's like that for all their sports. For us, there was nothing. You had to stand out. You had to beat up everybody. You had to have some good luck. You had to not give up. You know, I've seen a lot of guys that have, you know, that old cartoon where the guy's got the chisel and he's you know, eating away at this wall and the gold is right on the other side.
Yeah.
I've seen so many people just pick up their shovel and leave when the gold's on that other side. And you know, I've been able to convince a lot of guys to stick with it and have success and bring guys from zero to world champions and top contenders and having a career in this thing. And so I pride myself on that, and it's been through trial and error.
What's the closest? It doesn't seem like you've ever had that close moment where you were thinking about taking the shovel and leaving, right? Or did you ever have one?
I never had the inclination to stop. I was never a guy that gets burned out. I was pretty capable of separating all the stuff that would get you burned out from the things that you really want, and the things that you're envisioning. So I was never in that capacity, but it was all about adjustments, like understanding business. I learned a lot of business and people and relationships, and still learning through trial and error. So how did I make it? If you look back at how I made it and survived through that process, it was crazy. Like some instinctual things that went well, and learning on the fly, and you know, like I built a commune basically of fighters where I bought my first house back before you needed any type of proof of income. It was just like stated income loans and reverse mortgages. And the reason why our economy crashed, I bought a house when I had no money.
Yeah.
And I moved in all my buddies and just believed I'd make it work. And then, you know, started having a little success, bought the house next to that, bought the house next to that. Next thing you know, I've got a whole community of fighters that we're all, you know, some guys have a little bit of money, some guys are broke, and we're sharing rides at the gym. And that's kind of how my team was built, but also how I, you know, got training partners and was able to compete at the highest level.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did you do that for like, because I know you like building a team, but whether that's like, you needed to do that for your own career because you needed bodies here in Sacramento, or were you doing it just because that like you just like being a team leader, basically?
You know, I come from a wrestling background and a football background. Those are my sports growing up, you know, football first and then wrestling. And it feels good to have that camaraderie and team. And I enjoy helping people, and like genuinely was excited about what I was doing. So I was trying to spread the word, and it just kind of went from there. You know, it had nothing to do with, you know, a business by any means. It was all about creating something that was cool, and it just happened to be like this ecosystem. It was like, you know, people that were on the team were also working at the gym, or we get them jobs with my dad working construction, or my buddy Matt Sanchez and Chris Carlino, they started you know, a business out of one of the garages, which has employed so many of the fighters that you see today. You know, Lance Palmer and Andre Feely and TJ Dillashaw being three of those guys that worked for the you know, mowing lawns and stuff like that while they were on the rise up. So it was just a means to be living the dream at the time. We had, at one house, we had a spa and a pool, and at the other house, we had a barbecue and, you know, and the sauna, and like, you know, throughout time, we had probably, you know, 50 so fighters that had lived on that block, you know, 14 at a time, jammed in rooms and that kind of stuff. So it was all about just ingenuity and making things work.
When would you say was like the best part of your career? Like the most fun, the part that you enjoyed the most?
Let me see. I gotta say, my career has been fun all the way through, but I would say probably the very beginning where things started to really pick up, because it's a long story of how I got to, you know, becoming like a poster boy for the division and for the organizations, for the WC and then the UFC and everything else. You know, when my best friend from elementary school wrote an article about me when I was like 6 fights in, fighting on these little Indian casinos. That was picked up by an agent or a talent agent who was pitching the show called Say Uncle, which turned out to be Bully Beatdown.
Yeah.
It was stolen from us. And he published an article, and that turned into Warrior Nation, which was on MSNBC. It was a documentary that I was in and Gina Carano was in, where they followed our career at some little dinky shows. And then from there, the WC got bought by the UFC, and at the time I was a world champion in Gladiator Challenge and King of the Cage and the WEC, and fighting for TKO in Canada and whatever, trying to find an opportunity for the little guys. And then the WEC was bought by the UFC in like 2006. And that changed everything because it was under Zuffa umbrella with the Fertitta brothers and Dana White, and it was run like a tip-top promotion where they knew how to promote and knew how to build talent, and that was the changing point. But it was a long, like, jagged road to me being like the face of an organization. And then I had to win, you know. At that time, it was the Outdoor Network got bought by Versus, and Versus had just acquired the WEC rights, and the WEC was the #1 show on their platform. So they were just playing free replays of my fights because I was the most exciting champion at the time, over and over and over again. So my fights are playing all the time on this new station, on a new network, on a new organization, and I was the guy. And that like parlayed into the merge with UFC and everything else. So it's been crazy.
So maybe like a tough question to answer here, but like you said, you got in the sport to be a champion, and you want to be a champion, and it's now been what?
8 years?
Yeah.
Maybe 9 years? Something.
Yeah, 9. I think maybe even 10 years because you lost your title to Brown. I think in like 2008. Does that sound right? 2007 maybe. But yeah, let's just say 9, 10 years. You haven't been a champion.
Yeah.
How has that been?
You know, for me, the journey has been amazing. So when you look at why you're doing something, it's to be the best, absolutely, and also because you love it. And I take a look back at some of my favorite fighters throughout history and study the sport, and I always have. And these guys that have long careers, like a George Foreman, for example, or Muhammad Ali, or the Raging Bull, you know, the people that they've fought at the beginning of their careers and the people they've fought at their end of their careers can span like a 40, 50-year fight career.
Yeah.
Which is friggin' awesome and exciting, and it means a lot to me, you know. Me beating a Jens Pulver who was there for the very first UFCs, you know, and has a win over BJ Penn, and then I get to fight guys like this Petr Yan, who's probably going to be fighting till he's, you know, nearly 40, because he seems like the guy that likes fighting, and then the last person he fights is going to go on for another maybe 15 years or whatever it is. And when you look at my career as a top dog, somebody that's had opportunity after opportunity to fight the best guys, in all of my bouts has been best guys, you know, top tier guys, top 10, top 5, top 2, top 1, world champions. It's exciting for me, and I take a pride in that because there's a lot of flashes in the pan in this sport, in any sport, in anything out there. There's flashes in the pan, and I'm a testament to hard work and positivity and a healthy lifestyle and doing what you love and never giving up.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard other guys say that when their career's over, though, they remember the losses more than the wins. And that makes sense to me because, like, if you're competitive, you know, you remember the times more so. Like, when you took time off and you were retired for a little bit, were you thinking more along the lines of, like, what you just described, that, like, I'm proud that I did all this? Or, like, when fighting would pop in your head, would it be, like, dang, why didn't I beat Renan Barão that one time? Or why didn't I beat Dominic Cruz that one time? Like, which one would be in your mind more?
No regrets, not even one letter. I mean, I literally just enjoyed being retired. I mean, it was friggin' awesome. You know, it was like, holy crap, I still was in the gym every single day. I was busier than usual. I've accomplished more monetarily in my retired time than I have my whole fight specific time.
Yeah.
Which is a good feeling, and that's why you do things like that, is you step away with your brains intact and prove to yourself that you can do big things without the fight game. And I've done that. This year I'll have my biggest deal yet, that is bigger than my whole fight career. But still, I know there's a real timetable on this profession, and there will be a time when you cannot do it. And I do not want to kick myself for being like, oh man, I know where I stand with these young guys in here. I'm in, it was really frustrating being retired also, because you're not leading by example anymore, other than being there. Having guys that you're like, if I was training for a big fight, I would do what I'm doing now. You get up early, you grind, you push yourself to the brink, and then you replenish and you rest and you go over and over again. You train really hard and you fight easy. And so I really enjoyed my time retired. Didn't think about coulda, shoulda, wouldas, anything like that. I just enjoyed it. When I started getting the itch to compete for a number of different reasons, the new baby coming in, the new status of mixed martial arts in the world, how I'm stacking up with the young guys, leading by example again, the lay of the land at 135 pounds, like just getting me excited. And I'm part of a group, EO group, entrepreneurial group, where we meet once a month. And I'm like, I talked with them prior to retiring, being like, I think I want to retire. It's hard for me to get excited as excited as I used to. And I just feel like I want to, I have so many things I'm focusing on. I want to be able to focus on those and blah, blah, blah. And I want some things I haven't been able to do that I want to, happen in my life, like starting a family, etc. And the same thing, when I started to have the itch to come back, I talked to my guys and I'm like, made a big list of pros and cons, and the only con was that I said I was retired. I'm like, I know I can compete.
You actually wrote these down?
Yeah, I was like, and I'm like, the con is I said, hey, I'm retired. I want to be like the guy that says I'm retired and come back, but I think I'm still a badass.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. And I'm testing it with these guys. And I started doing these grappling competitions where I'm like, preparing for a grappling match, but I really just want to prepare to fight, because that's what I want to really like to do. And so, that was kind of the process of coming back, was like, man, there's a bunch of reasons to do it, and like hardly any reasons not to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm wondering, like, if on the side of the pros, because the easy story for us to say, and like the easy story for like fans out there to like understand and digest, is like, Urijah he retired, but he missed the sport. Obviously, he missed competing, and also he wanted to come back to do the one thing he never did, was to win a UFC fight. But it's just like, listening to you talk, it just doesn't seem like that's a motivator for you.
Always, I've been proud of what I've done, and there's times where I felt like I should have won the belt. That first fight with Dominic Cruz, I didn't get robbed by any means, but it very easily could have gone my way, and nobody would have batted an eye. And I've had two short notice fights because I was the guy that was beating the top contenders over and over again. So I got to jump in at short time. My goal is always to be the best, and I will train like that, and I will visualize like that. But I'm not defined by whether I've got the belt right now or whatnot. Like I know me. I know how proud I am of what I've done, and I enjoy what I do. Now, would it be a great story and a great next chapter to go out with that strap? And can I do it? Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially motivated me. My last probably 7 fights, there was preparation on point, skill set on point, but just the excitement level was not as there as it should have been, And I wouldn't say that I would perform better or worse, but maybe the new motivation and the new excitement is the edge that I needed, because and that's also lay of the land. We've got right now is the most stacked our weight has ever been. You've got me coming out of retirement. You've got Cody Garbrandt, who's hungry and you know, wanting to come prove himself again. And you've got the young bucks like Aljamain and Petr Yan and Sandhagen and Song Yadong and you know, all these next generation of guys that no one knows how great they're going to be until they become that. And then you've got legends coming out and dropping weight classes because they see opportunities. You know, Jose Aldo and Frankie Edgar and you know, TJ off his cheating suspension for being a weasel. You know, we got Henry Cejudo, who's the goofiest bastard on the planet, who's a badass, but calling out chicks, but he's the man right now in 2 divisions. I mean, what better time to come back than right now?
Yeah. What's it been like being in the gym? I mean, training for a high-level mixed martial arts contest against a guy who's 16 years younger than you at age 40. What is that like?
You know, until you say it like that, I never think about it. I think that's part of my delusion still kicking in. You know, it's a blessing, delusion. It's been amazing. You know, I think the one thing that may be unique about me is, and you can add genetics in the mix to anyone who's a top level athlete, like there's probably a component to that. But since birth, I've been, and before birth, in the womb, I've been like raised by religious hippies that were feeding me like the best stuff on the planet. Royal jelly, bee pollen, wheatgrass juice, apple, you know, raw apple cider honey vinegar and garlic and you know, ginger drinks and like, you know, all this crap to keep you young. And I think it worked, you know, on top of just having a lifestyle of you know, constant health and fitness, and having a great positive attitude about what I'm doing. I feel young. Now, if you look at like the most knowledgeable guys on the planet, they're old bastards. You know, if they could maintain their body, they'd be the baddest dudes. These monks or whoever's been around who's like seen everything and obsessed with martial arts and are continuing to grow. They've got this whole thing of knowledge that's piling up over time, but their bodies give out. And so, you know, that's kind of a thing that I like to think of is how high the knowledge is and how strong can you keep your body. I mean, those are 2 things that are important. Some guys stop learning. I know I've seen a lot of fighters that are like, okay, done learning mixed martial arts. Now I'm just going to get in shape every time I have a fight. I'm going to collect my check, etc. And there's people that are, and I think some of the great coaches out there, Matt Hume and the you know, Jackson Winklejohn guys and Duke Rufus and Rafael Cordero and like, you know, Mike Brown and the list goes on. These guys are living, breathing, eating mixed martial arts. Yeah. That knowledge that's in their head is crazy. If they could be in their 20-year-old body, they would be 20 times better than they were at 20. So I've just happened to be able to keep my faculties and body in tip-top shape. Now, is it as good as when I was 21 physically? I mean, I don't know. Probably not. Probably a little bit slower. I'm not sure. But I was a lot faster than everybody at 21. A lot faster.
So you had some speed that you could lose.
Yeah, I had a little give there. So I feel great, man.
Just real quick, you said kind of you know, you did the regrets joke, not even a letter. But seriously, in like a 16-year professional career, you don't have one single regret.
You know, I probably would have negotiated harder on some of my contracts, just knowing my value a little bit more. It's hard to know because the sport has been through so many ups and downs, and at times when I could have really played hardball, sometimes the opportunities weren't there. But so maybe that a little bit from a business standpoint, knowing what I know now, and you know, you always regret. I wouldn't say regret, but just wish you had another chance on the fights where you didn't get to put it all out there. Like when I fought Mike Brown, the second time I broke my hands. I broke my right hand in the first round on his head, and I dislocated my thumb on his elbow in the third round. And but I got to fight 5 rounds and put my best effort out there, and that's how it goes. You know, those kind of things happen in a fight. Same with Jose Aldo. He battered my leg, and I, you know, limp into the corner in the 3rd round, getting carried by my corner. I like those kind of losses, but the fights where, like, I lost one fight to Brow where you know, he caught me with a good punch, and then I get my thumbs up, and the referee didn't see it, so they stopped the fight early, and it's a world championship fight. That's a hard one. The first fight against Mike Brown, I did like a jumping back elbow and got caught hung up on a fight, so I only got to fight in I don't know if it was the 1st or the 2nd round. I don't like that kind of fight. But I don't have regrets because the preparation's always been there. But, you know, you always wish you could have some do-overs.
You know, the first Barao fight, didn't you?
Yeah, I broke my rib in the 1st round. But, I mean, that happens. It's not like I'm fighting, you know. That happens to a lot of people.
How would you describe this fight for someone who, like, let's say they're kind of just vaguely aware of you, but, like, what does this fight mean in your career? Who's the guy you're fighting? Just kind of set the scene for this fight.
This fight is the toughest fight out there, you know, and that's the ones I want. You know, I talked to Dana, and Dana's fair with me. I mean, I'm not trying to go and hold these guys to the light. I don't have, you know, all the reason in the world to be, you know, getting Uber's amounts of cash, but I want something that's fair. And I said, look, I'll fight whoever you want. Give me the toughest dudes. And he gave me a bunch of options of guys, and he said, this is the guy that, you know, we think is the man, and that you beat him, you're in title contention. And I go, all right, let's do that. That's it. And you know, look at Peter, or however you say his name. He's my kind of guy. He's a boxer, but I feel like he has a wrestling mentality. I've seen him fight multiple times. He doesn't give up. He's got a lot of danger. He goes for the kill. He's a guy that could be a champion in the future, I believe, absolutely. And I want to fight all those guys. That's what I fight. That's who I fight. You know, and that's the same with my last opponent. I want to fight the best guys that you can put in front of me. Otherwise, I need to be out of the game, you know. And so, you know, when there were some lesser ranked guys or matchup wise, whatever, I'm just like, look, you guys want me to fight this guy because he's the guy the young guy you want to, you know, give a chance to fight me? Let's do it.
I mean, how much thought have you given to your next, I don't know how else to say it, your next retirement though, or your final retirement? Like,
it's,
you know,
close.
It's a lot of questions. People get questions about that all the time though, of like, how do you want to go out in this sport? You know, do you think about that, and how would you like to go out? Is there a plan?
You know, I've been very lucky in the fact that I don't have to fight, you know, and so that was part of me retiring, was making sure that I do not have to fight in order to make a living. It's nice when you understand what a financial raise is, and you can just go do it yourself, doing something you love for 15 minutes, which you can parlay into bigger deals and turn into more money because you know how, etc. That is enticing, but I mean, I'm one fight away from retiring every fight. Absolutely. And it's just a feeling with me. I could have retired after this last one. Would have been a nice way to go out, but like if I look back at all the legends in the sport, the guys that have stayed in too long and got out too early, or you know, whatever, they're just celebrated. You know, I don't worry about people like, oh, you went out on a high note and this and that, blah, blah. And I'm like, not really. I didn't really go out on a high note. I lost a world championship to Dominic Cruz in a decision. Then I lost a lackluster fight to, you know, Billy Rivera or Jimmy Rivera, whatever his name is, via the ankle kicks. My first time losing 2 fights in a row. Then I had a big win right before I retired, but that's not like you went out as the world champion and went out on a high note. It's like I went out because I wanted to, because I felt like it, and that's why I came back. And you know, this might be my last fight. If they don't give me, you know, a very exciting fight afterwards, then it might be my last fight. But for me, I'm just really enjoying the process and enjoying the moment and taking this very serious, and looking to have a great performance and a big win.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports and analysis, download the ESPN app. And for live streaming and special content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.